Hi everyone, it's Lizzie, and today I'm going to be reviewing the YA novel You Know Me Well by LaCour and David Levithan. This is also an LGBTQI+ novel. I read this book back in July of 2016, but I have recently reread it so that I could refresh my memory on exactly what happens. Also, just be a little bit more critical of my first impressions. It was one I just saw on the bookshelf when I was perusing the shelves, and I really liked the cover, thought it was really nice. I know you don't judge a book by a cover, but when you see a pretty cover, it's really hard to just dismiss it. I also really liked the blurb on the back and I thought it sounded really interesting, so I picked it up and here we are. This book is told through two alternating perspectives of Mark and Kate. Mark written by David Levithan and Kate by LaCour. And the story takes place in San Francisco during Pride Week. While this will be a spoiler-free review, I am just going to quickly describe what happens over the first two chapters so you get an idea of what to expect from this book. When we're introduced to Kate, she is about to meet Violet, someone who she has lusted over for the longest time because she sounds so amazing. But because she sounds so amazing and wonderful and she can't wait to meet her, she actually self-sabotages herself and runs away from their first meeting. Kate ends up in the very bar that Mark just so happens to be dancing to Rihanna's Umbrella in his undies on top of the bar. Which isn't something he normally does, but he's currently trying to impress his best friend Ryan, who he is secretly in love with, but Ryan hasn't come out yet, which complicates things. And it's also the very first night of Pride. When Mark spots Kate, he's horrified and has to go over to talk to her to make sure that she's not going to say anything and ruin his squeaky clean reputation because he is currently underage in a bar which he has snuck out to be at. However, Kate isn't interested in ratting him out in any way. She is just interested in becoming friends. After a few minutes of talking, where Kate is feeling rather desperate having run away from the assumed love of her life, they realize they have so much more in common than they ever realized. And that maybe they understand each other better than even their best friends do? Although this is a chance encounter, they seem to just get each other. It becomes evident that they both are feeling quite stuck in their current situations, and they instantly relate to each other and just click. The story then goes on to follow their relationship with each other and how that in turn allows them to analyze the relationships around them and also get to know themselves a bit better along the way. One of the biggest pros of this book for me that just really stood out and was so apparent throughout was how the LGBTQI+ community was portrayed. It was so loving and safe and positive. For example, the feeling that Kate gets when she's running away from this encounter with Violet and she goes to the bar where Mark happens to be, and she gets this feeling of just being safe. Even though she's underage and she is in a relatively foreign place, she just feels safe around the older community, almost like they're looking out for her, and she knows that. There is a poetry slam later on in the book, and without saying too much about it, it's just seen as such a safe and secure place. Even some of the public displays of affection that happen throughout this book, no spoilers, it's celebrated and appreciated. The friendship between Kate and Mark, although a lot of people have said it's really unrealistic, I can see how the situations they both found themselves in can be a kind of catalyst to get them shoved together and just be able to understand each other's situations, because it's almost like a mirror reflection. Their friendship is based on honesty and truth, and they're so supportive and just helpful towards each other. Such a wholesome friendship portrayed throughout this book was just really refreshing. Look, I'm not sure if this is a pro or not, but Kate is introduced as Katie by her best friend, Lena, and Kate insists on being called Kate, which is a bit of a change because she has always been known as Katie and she has never really connected with it. This was a huge point for me that I could relate to because I have always been known as Liz. That's just been my name. My full name is Elizabeth and I've been known as Liz, and I have never connected with my name Elizabeth or Liz, and I feel like even when I say my name it doesn't sound like my name, which has always been really weird. And when I discovered that Lizzie was also a name Elizabeths could be called, my mind was blown, and I thought, if this is a name I can have, why isn't it mine? Which might sound completely weird, but I really related to that, and it's the first time I've seen that in a book. So another thing is that all of the main characters, as well as anyone who has a speaking role aside from the parents, are queer in this book, which is kind of amazing. So yeah, there's that. So the cons in this book is that the whole story takes place over a week. And while it's fitting to take place during Pride Week, it just feels a little bit unrealistic. The characters go through so much, and I know it's fiction, but I feel like if this had taken place over even 2 weeks to a month, it would have been a lot more plausible. So while this is possible to have taken place over a week, I don't feel it's really plausible. But that's just my opinion, and that's what this review's all about, really. This book is written so poetically, with a mature and insightful voice, which I have no qualms with. However, when they're being told from the perspective of 17 and 18-year-olds, I do take a bit of an issue with it, because it's not that they are pretending to be insightful, it's that they actually are, and it didn't seem to really fit. I understand that they're coming from their last week of high school, and with that kind of comes a bit of mature wisdom in some people's cases. It's a really weird feeling you get when something's coming to an end that was so big as high school, but it just felt a little bit disconnected to me. But at the same time, it's a positive critique to the writers, because they just write so beautifully. Throughout this book, some characters fall in and out of love. While that is believable, obviously, it's a natural thing that happens. Love is love. Again, I don't feel like it's a plausible thing to happen over a week. I would mention names and give examples, but that will give spoilers, and I don't want to do that. But I do remember what it was like in high school for me personally, and what I thought was love then, or something very similar, turned out to be nothing like love. And I don't want to diminish what the characters are going through and their feelings here, because honestly they seem a lot more real than whatever I went through was. I just don't feel like that kind of switch, it came from a more mature place, is what I'm saying. So it just feels a bit strange that you might have one character who thinks and feels that way, but to have a number of them, yeah, it was just a little bit odd. And I just don't think it kind of justified the actions. Again, if it took place over a month, that would be more realistic to me, but yeah. Mark still calls Kate Katie throughout the whole book, and he never gets corrected. Lena gets corrected, and so does Kate's dad, but if she's able to correct other people and she has this kind of instant connection with Mark, why was he never corrected? So really minor thing, I know, but considering I related to that point in the book, I thought it was just a little bit strange that she just never said, hey, sorry, it's actually Kate. But don't worry, like, that's fine, just call me Kate from now on. I don't know. And lastly, for my cons on this book, has to go to the fact that Violet is a manic pixie dream girl. I really didn't want her to be, although that's how she started off in Kate's mind of like her idea of her, she continued to be that way. I feel like maybe if the book had gone on a little bit longer, but that didn't happen. Overall, this is just such a lovely, poignant book, and I would recommend it to you if you want to read about love and friendship and self-discovery, because I think it's just a really excellent representation of them. It also does a great job at portraying the different types of love that you can experience, such as the friendship love, the familial love, and the romantic love. And I think it's really important when you're trying to discover yourself to realize that there are different types of love, and how to not only differentiate between them, but also to accept them. As for the rating, I give this book 4 stars because it was just so lovely and I really did enjoy it. I happened to read this book when I was in San Francisco back in 2016, and I know the book has the Golden Gate Bridge on the cover. You would think that's very obvious, but for some reason when I packed it to go with me over to America, I didn't pick up on that. So when I was reading it on the plane, I was like, oh my goodness, how fitting. Who is my favourite character in this book? For this answer, I have to go with June and maybe even Uma. You can't really have one without the other, but I feel like if there were a movie made out of this book, I would be most excited to see the two of them. My favourite aspect of this book, I don't know how realistically portrayed all of the love and support and just wonderfulness that is in and around and about Pride, but I believed it and I so want it to be real. Regardless, like when I was there, I did feel a wonderful sense of community and just being really welcomed, and so I do believe that, but I don't know if Pride is exactly like that or if this book was just written from a super positive viewpoint, but I appreciated it and I really liked that aspect of this book. And as I've already mentioned, the self-discovery, I also really enjoyed that throughout this book because I think it is really important, and I think that it was written really well. And I don't just mean for the main characters either. Throughout this book, a number of characters have self-discoveries, and I just think it's a beautiful thing. Who would I be in this book? I think this one's a little tricky to answer because while I related to different aspects of different characters throughout this book, I didn't really relate to one character in particular. However, for the sake of answering the question, I'm going to go with Kate, and not just because of the name thing. Out of all the characters in this book, I feel like I related to her the most, while not 100%, so I feel like I have to go with her for this. What is this book similar to? I think that as recommendations, I would say if you enjoyed The Perks of Being a Wallflower or Will Grayson, or both of them, you would enjoy this book. A new question I have decided to add on to this question section is whether or not this book inspired me to do something. For Ready Player One, I would have answered that that book inspired me to play more video games, as well as inspiring me to stream on Twitch, which is so scary but also incredibly exciting to me. For this book, I would say that it has inspired me to be a little bit more honest with people where I can and actually explain how I'm feeling instead of just saying I'm fine or no worries, etc. If I didn't already want to go back to San Francisco, it would definitely have inspired me to want to go back. And the simple thing that this book has inspired me to do is to drink a gin and tonic. So, cheers! Anyway, that's it for this book video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did like this review, please remember to give it a thumbs up, and I will see you in the next video. Bye! I will call you Kate if you call me Lizzie, and everyone will be happy.